Got joy in my soul. God is in control. I got Satan on my trail, but I'm singing.
Welcome back to Kingdom Warfare with Lucretia. I am your host, Lucretia Shaw, founding visionary of Lucretia's Kingdom Legacy, a kingdom-driven platform built to equip, empower, and elevate individuals into purpose, clarity, and calling. Listen, we just stepped into the month of April. New blessings, new blessings, new blessings, new grace, and new mercy. I'm actually the author and Christian publisher and coach. And through Consult God First Publishing, I help visionaries, leaders, and storytellers turn God-given ideas into published works and kingdom impact. This is your podcast. This podcast is your war room. This is a space for men and women in the trenches who are fighting battles of faith, purpose, identity, and alignment. And here we talk discernment. We talk spiritual posture. And we learn how to stand fully armored in every season. And through our impact arm, we have the Destiny Protective Initiative, where we go above and beyond conversation into compassion, partnering with donors and sponsors to support young girls with sanitary napkins and personal hygiene supplies, because dignity and destiny matter in the kingdom. So wherever you're tuning in from, welcome to the wall. Suit up, stay watchful, stay faithful. This is Lucretia, Kingdom Warfare with Lucretia. And as we just step into April, we are entering into a new focus. We're entering a new dimension of warfare. Not external, not visible, but internal. The warfare of the mind. Because before anything manifests in your life, it is first introduced in your thoughts. And tonight's episode is titled Casting Down Thoughts That Don't Belong to God. Because let's be honest, some of the greatest battles we face weren't with people. They were in our minds. Thoughts that came out of nowhere. Thoughts that didn't align with who God called us to be. Thoughts that created fear, doubt, pressure, and overthinking. And if you're not careful, you'll start believing those thoughts that were never sent by God. 2 Corinthians 10:5 says, casting down imaginations and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. Now that means you have authority over your thoughts. You have authority over your thoughts. But the authority must be exercised. Let me ask you something. Have you ever sat in a thought so long that it started to feel like truth? Let's go a little bit deeper. We want to be able to recognize the thought. So before we can cast down anything, Before we can confront it, before we replace it, we have to recognize it. Because you cannot fight what you don't identify. And one of the enemy's greatest strategies is to make you believe that every thought you think is yours. So you sit in it, you process it, and you carry it without ever questioning where it came from. But here's the truth. Not every thought in your mind originated from you. Some thoughts are planted to distract you. Some are sent to discourage you, and some are designed to create fear and delay. And if you don't discern the difference, you'll start agreeing with something God never said about you. So let's start here. I want to step into this first segment that I want to talk about tonight. Not every thought is yours. Because one of the most important things you have to understand is this in this season. Not every thought you think belongs to you. I want you to let that settle for a little bit. Let it settle for a little while. Because many believers are fighting battles in their minds and assuming every thought that enters is their own. And because they assume it's theirs, they start taking ownership of something God never offered. But let me tell y'all something tonight. The enemy is very strategic. He does not always attack loudly. He does not always show up with obvious chaos. He does not always come through visible warfare. Sometimes he comes through a thought, a suggestion, a whisper, a question, a mental image, a narrative that quietly settles in your mind and then starts replaying itself. Some thoughts are planted. Some thoughts are influenced. And some thoughts are assigned. And if you don't discern the source, you'll start agreeing with something that was sent to weaken you. And the enemy whispers things like this: you're not enough. You're falling behind. It's never going to work out. You're by yourself. God is not going to come through this time. You always mess things up. Why even try? And it'll put you so deep down into a depression. Now, I want you to notice how subtle that is. Because he doesn't always start with a dramatic lie. Sometimes he starts with a small thought and waits to see if you'll entertain it. Listen, because the enemy, he understands that if he can get you to entertain a thought long enough, he can get you to internalize it. And once you internalize it, you begin to build emotional agreement with it. But let me ask you something. I want to ask the listeners out there something tonight. Honestly, what thoughts have you been agreeing with that God never said about you? Like, what story have you been replaying that doesn't sound like heaven? Or what have you allowed to sit in your mind so long that it started feeling familiar, normal, and true, even though it brought no peace? Because agreement is powerful. And once you agree with the thought, it begins to shape your emotions. Now, your emotions begin to influence your reactions. Your reactions begin to influence your behavior. And your behavior begins to shape your life. If you look around in the world today, what do y'all see? That is why this is not just mental. This is spiritual warfare. Because if the enemy can't stop you physically, he will try to wear you down mentally. If he can't block your assignment externally, he will try to confuse you internally. And if he can't take your calling, he will try to make you question it. And many people are not losing because they are weak. They are losing because they are unaware. It's a lot of people walking around right now who don't even realize that they are under attack. I remember seasons where my mind felt overwhelmed. And I can remember back in 2015, 2016, when I was writing my book, The Spiritual Battle, and I was going through mental torture. I couldn't even pray. It's like the battle in my mind was so extensive. And the more I tried to pray, the more I had mental anguish. And where I was strong on the outside, but internally I was really battling. I was overthinking everything. I was replaying conversations. I was questioning what I said. I was questioning what I heard. I was carrying thoughts that did not bring peace, but I kept letting them sit there. I looked steady publicly, but privately my mind was busy. And that's the thing about mental warfare. Last month we talked about financial warfare. Listen, I'm telling y'all, there's levels to this warfare. Y'all got to understand it. So I hope last month when we talked about financial warfare that y'all got a lot out of that. But mental warfare, listen, people can think you're fine because you're functioning. But functioning is not always freedom. Sometimes you're still moving, but your mind is exhausted. Sometimes you're still showing up, but inside you're wrestling with thoughts that are stealing your peace. And this is something that I had to learn, something that changed everything for me. Just because a thought enters my mind does not mean it gets permission to stay. That was a major shift for me. Because before I learned that, I thought every thought deserved analysis. I thought I had to process it, sit with it, explain it, understand it. But some thoughts are not meant to be processed, they are meant to be rejected. Let me say that again. Some thoughts are not meant to be entertained, they are meant to be cast down. And if you don't learn that, you will waste spiritual energy fighting thoughts that should have been dismissed the moment they arrive. But let me ask you a deeper question to those who are out there listening tonight. Listen, because listen, I like to make you think. Have you been giving too much attention to what should have been rebuked? Or have you been rehearsing fear instead of resisting it? Have you been calling something my thoughts when it's really been warfare? Because when you name it correctly, you start personalizing it and start fighting it. And that shift, it matters. Because if you think it's just you, you'll sit in shame. But when you recognize it as warfare, guess what? You'll rise in authority. Not every thought deserves your attention. And not every thought deserves your agreement. Because what you agree with, you empower. What you entertain, guess what? You give space to grow. And what you allow to stay unchecked in your mind will eventually try to sit in your emotions, your choices, and your identity. So the first level of warfare of the mind is learning to recognize this thought did not come from God. This thought is not producing peace. This thought does not belong here. And once you know that, you stop letting every thought sit at your table. So now that we understand that not every thought belongs to us, let's go a little bit deeper. Because the next level is not just recognizing the thought, it's confronting it. Because recognition without response still leaves the thought active, right? And some of you have already identified the lie, but you haven't challenged it yet. So in this next segment, we're going to talk about what it means to stop sitting in thoughts that oppose God and start taking authority over them. So you must confront what you think. So now that we identify something powerful, that not every thought belongs to you, let's go a little bit deeper. Because awareness alone is not enough. You must confront what you think. And this is where many people struggle at. Because they recognize the thought, but they don't challenge it. They notice the fear, but they sit in it. They feel the doubt, but they don't speak against it. And what you don't confront, you eventually come into agreement with. Let me say that again. What you don't confront, you will eventually agree with. Because silence gives thoughts room to grow. And what starts a small thought can become a stronghold if it goes unchallenged. Listen, I know somebody out there probably feeling this. Somebody know what I'm talking about. This is why 2 Corinthians 10:5 tells us, don't just say recognize the thought. It says casting down. That's not passive. That's not quiet. That's not emotional processing. That's intentional warfare. Casting down means you reject it, you tear it down, you refuse to let it sit, you don't negotiate with it. Because some thoughts are not meant to be processed, they are meant to be opposed. Listen, I wasn't gonna come on tonight because my granddaughter, well, I ain't gonna blame her, okay, but I had strep throat, and I said, you know what, I'm not gonna let this stop me from doing what I need to do. But I'm better. I'm better. But let me say this. Let me make this real for y'all. If a thought enters your mind that says you're going to fail, you don't sit there and think about it all night. You don't analyze why you feel that way. And you don't replay it over and over. You respond with authority. That is not what God said about me. Because if a thought says you're not qualified, you don't shrink, you respond, and you say God qualifies those he calls. If a thought says you're alone, you respond, God said he would never leave me, never forsake me. Because if you don't talk back, you will start listening. And if you start listening, you will start believing. Let me ask, look, I love to ask questions. Have you been passive in your thinking? Like, have you been letting thoughts sit without ever challenging them? Have you been agreeing silently with things that contradict what God told you? Because passive thinking creates active strongholds. And I'm going to be honest, the battle starts within the mind. You don't know what people are thinking when they want to harm themselves. You don't know the things that they think, and they're having a battle within their mind. Listen, strongholds are built through repetition. The more you hear it, the more you think it, the more you feel it, the more it starts to shape how you move. This is why some people say, I don't know why I feel this way. It's because they've been sitting in thoughts they never confronted. Now I'm going to take y'all a little bit deeper. Confronting your thoughts requires discipline, because your mind is going to try to wander. It will try to revisit the same negative cycles. It will try to replay what hurt you, what stressed you, what confused you. And if you don't interrupt it, it will continue. Like, how many times has your mind replayed something that God already told you to release? Like, how many times have you sat in a thought longer than you should have? But discipline says this: I'm not staying there. I'm not sitting in this. I'm not letting this grow. That's authority. And authority doesn't wait for feelings. It acts on truth. Now, let me share something personal again. There were seasons where my mind will replay things constantly. Conversations, situations, what ifs, why did that happen? What could I have done differently? And then I realized something. My mind was rehearsing pain. Not because I wanted to, but because I wasn't confronting it. And the more I let it sit, the heavier it felt, the more real it felt, until I had to make a decision. I'm not letting my mind run freely anymore. I'm not letting the enemy live rent free in my head anymore. I'm going to discipline what I allow to stay, because freedom in your mind requires intentional interruption. You have to interrupt negative patterns, You have to interrupt fear-based thoughts. You have to interrupt cycles of overthinking, and you got to replace them with truth. Now, I'm going to take you a little bit deeper. I want to ask you something a little bit deeper. To all the listeners out there, listen, let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on this topic. Are you confronting your thoughts, or are you being controlled by them? Answer that question. Because one leads to freedom, the other one leads to mental exhaustion. And God did not call you to be mentally exhausted. He called you to have a sound mind. 2 Timothy 1:7 tells us, he said, for God had not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. A sound mind is not a quiet mind. It's a disciplined mind. You cannot win mental warfare passively. I'm going to tell you that right now. You win intentionally. You win it by recognizing the thought, confronting the thought, refusing to agree with the thought. Because every thought you allow to stay is shaping something in your life. And every thought you confront breaks the power it tried to have over you. Now, here's where we go even deeper, because confronting the thought is powerful, but it's not complete. Because if you remove a thought and you don't replace it, your mind becomes vulnerable again. And that same thought will try to return. So in this next segment, I'm going to talk about what it means to not just cast those thoughts down, but to replace them with truth. So we're going to step into this next segment, replace the thought with truth, right? So now that we identified something, not every thought is yours, and we learned something else, right? We learned that you must confront what you think. But here's where many people stop. They cast the thought down, but they don't replace it. And an empty mind becomes vulnerable. Because if you remove a thought and don't fill that space with truth, guess what? That same thought is going to come back. Stronger, louder, and more convincing. That's why the Bible doesn't just tell us what to reject. It tells us what to focus on. Philippians 4:8 says, whatsoever things are true, honest, just, pure, lovely, think on these things. Notice that. Let me say that again. Philippians 4:8 tells us, whatsoever things are true, honest, just, pure, lovely, think on these things. Notice that. That's instruction. God is not just telling you what to avoid. He's telling you what to meditate on, because your mind needs direction. And let me ask you something honestly. What are you feeding your mind daily? See, one thing I've learned, I don't watch the news. You know, it's a lot of stuff that goes on social media. I'm very careful about what I take in, what I hear, who I surround myself around, and who I let speak into me. That's important. Romans 12:2 tells us we have to renew our minds daily. It's a lot of negative stuff going on in the world, no matter how, now let me say this, no matter how positive you are, it's going to be some negative things that's going to try to creep in. But guess what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to cast those thoughts down. You know, if you constantly feed your mind with fear-based conversations, negative environments, toxic content, overthinking cycles, your thoughts will reflect that. I study the mind. Look, I wrote a book about the mind. Be ye transformed by the renewing of the mind, your subconscious mind. Listen, we're going to get a little deep. We're going to get a little bit deeper this month talking about warfare of the mind. But if you begin to feed your mind with the word, with truth, encouragement, faith-filled content, your thinking begins to shift. It begins to shift. This is why I was talking to somebody earlier today, and I told them, I said, you know what? It's very important who you have in your circle. Because if you have a circle of carnal minded friends, then the enemy got a target on your head. And when your thinking shifts, your life follows. So let's go a little bit deeper. Replacing a thought is not passive, it is intentional and repetitive, right? Because your mind has been trained. Some of you have trained your mind to expect the worst, overanalyze everything, assume negative outcomes, rehearse fear instead of faith. Faith and fear cannot coexist. And that didn't happen overnight. That came through repetition. So now renewal also requires repetition. And let me make this a little bit practical for you. Because if the thought says, I'm not enough, you don't just cast it down once. You replace it with, I am who God says I am. If a thought come across your mind and say, I'm not enough, you say, hey, I am who God says I am. If the thought says it's not going to work, you replace it with, God is working all things together for my good. Romans 8:28. If the thought says I'm behind, you replace it with, I am in God's timing. God's timing is perfect. Because replacement requires intentional speaking and thinking. And let me say something that might challenge you tonight. You cannot think negative all day and expect peace at night. Let me say that again. You cannot think negative all day and expect peace at night. It doesn't work like that. Because peace is the result of what you've been feeding your mind. Now let's go a little bit deeper. What you consume matters. What you listen to matters. What you watch matters. And again, who you allow to speak into your life matters. Because everything you take in eventually shows up in your thoughts. I had to learn this personally. Because there were things I had to stop listening to, conversations I had to step away from, environments I had to limit, because I realized some of my anxiety was not a spiritual attack. It was what I was consuming. So let me ask you this. Is what you're feeding your mind building your faith, or is it feeding your fear? Ask yourself that question. And then I want you to give yourself an answer. Is what you're feeding your mind, is it building your faith, or is it feeding your fear? Because your mind cannot stay healthy if your intake is toxic. Now, here's another level. Replacing thoughts also requires consistency. Because one moment of truth cannot undo a lifetime of negative thinking. So you have to become disciplined, not just once, not just when you feel like it, but daily. Because renewal is not a moment, it's a process. And that reflect me back again to Romans 12:2. It says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renewing is ongoing. It means you don't just do it once, you keep doing it. Even when it feels repetitive, even when you don't see immediate change, because over time, your mind begins to shift. Your reactions begin to shift. Your emotions begin to shift. Your peace begins to return. But let me ask you something a little bit deeper. Are you replacing thoughts with truth, or are you just removing them temporarily? I want you to sit with that for a minute. Because temporary removal leads to repeated cycles, but intentional replacement leads to transformation. You don't just cast down thoughts, you replace them. Because what fills your mind will shape your life. And if you want peace, clarity, and stability, you must be intentional about what you allow to stay. Truth must become louder than the lie. Now let's bring this thing all together, because mental warfare is not about perfection. It's about authority. It's about knowing what doesn't belong, how to confront it, and what to replace it with. And when you begin to walk in that, you stop being controlled by your mind and you start taking authority over it. So let's step into this final segment. Take authority over your mind. This is where the shift happens. This is where you stop being a victim in your mind and you step into authority. Because hear me clearly, God never called you to be controlled by your thoughts. He called you to govern them. You were not created to sit in fear. You were not created to live in anxiety. You were not created to be tormented by thoughts that don't align with God. You were created to have a sound mind. Again, 2 Timothy 1:7 says, for God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind. Let me break that down. Power means you have authority. Love means you are secure in Him. And a sound mind means you are not meant to be mentally unstable. So if something is attacking your mind, it didn't come from God. And if it didn't come from God, you have the authority to reject it. But here's where many people struggle. They want peace, but they don't exercise authority. They want clarity, but they don't discipline their thoughts. They want freedom, but they keep entertaining what God told them to cast down. Have you been asking God for peace, but not taking authority over your mind? Because peace is not automatic. Peace is protected. And it is protected by what you allow and what you reject. Let's go deeper. Authority means you don't negotiate with thoughts that don't belong. You don't sit in fear waiting for it to leave, and you don't let anxiety have a seat at your table. You confront it, you reject it, and you replace it. Because when you understand authority, you stop saying, I don't know why I feel like this. And you start saying, this does not belong to me. That's a shift. Authority requires consistency, because your mind has patterns. It will try to go back to what is familiar. Fear may try to return. Overthinking may try to come back. Old thoughts may try to revisit. Depression kicks in. But this time, guess what? You don't let them sit, because now guess what? You recognize it. And recognition leads to resistance. James 4:7 tells us, resist the devil and he will flee from you. Notice it didn't say ignore him. It didn't say tolerate it. It said resist. Resistance is active. It means I'm not accepting this. I'm not agreeing with this. I'm not letting this stay. And the more you resist, the weaker the thought becomes. Submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. I remember one time when I was going through mental torture, that's all I could think of. Submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. Submit to God. I kept repeating that over and over and over again. And those thoughts that I was having, I'm telling you, they ceased. Because the more I kept saying, submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. What have you been tolerating in your mind that God gave you authority over? Like, what have you been sitting in that you should have stood up against? Because once you understand authority, everything changes. You stop being overwhelmed. You stop being controlled. You stop being mentally drained. And so there are many that are mentally exhausted. And when you stop being mentally drained and you begin to walk in clarity, discipline, peace, and stability, because now your mind is no longer leading you, you are leading it. Let me say that again. You are not led by your thoughts, you lead your thoughts. Everything we do starts with the thought. Think about it. What you think, you react on. And when that becomes your reality, you walk differently, you respond differently, you think differently, you carry yourself differently. Because now you understand my mind is not a battlefield I lose in, it's a battlefield I win in. Mental warfare is real. Just like financial warfare was real, we talked about it. But even though mental warfare is real, but so is your authority. You don't have to sit in every thought. You don't have to carry every feeling, and you don't have to believe every narrative, because God has given you the power to cast it down, replace it, take your mind back. And from this day forward, we don't just recognize the battle, we win it. Too many people are losing their lives because they are losing the battle. They're losing the battle in their mind. Listen, mental warfare is real. I want you to say this out loud. Not quietly, not passively, but with authority. Anybody out there that's listening? Because you may be battling within your mind right now and may not know how to take your mind back. I take authority over my mind. Every thought that does not align with God, I cast it down. I reject fear. I reject doubt. Say it out loud. I reject anxiety and overthinking. My mind is not a place of confusion. It is a place of clarity. I will not entertain thoughts that weaken me. I will not agree with thoughts that God did not send. I have power over my thinking. I have discipline over my mind. I have peace because my mind is aligned with God. Every lie is being replaced with truth. Every negative pattern is being broken. I have a sound mind. I have a focused mind. I have a renewed mind. My mind is covered. My mind is guarded. My mind is under authority. And from this day forward, I will lead my thoughts. I will not be led by them. In Jesus' name. Amen. If this episode broke something off of your mind tonight, share it. Because someone else is silently battling what you just learned how to fight. Stay armored, stay disciplined, and stay aware. Now, before I close out tonight's War Room session, I want to take a moment to share how you can stay connected and become part of what God is building. Because under Lucretia's Kingdom Legacy, we're not just building a podcast. We're building a place for clarity, for healing, for purpose, for financial breakthrough, and for kingdom impact across the globe. So I want to share a few announcements with you too. As I've been sharing throughout this episode, this is not just teaching for me. This is something that I've lived. Back in 2015, I went through one of the most intense seasons of mental warfare in my life. And I'm not talking about surface level struggle. I'm talking about a place where I couldn't even think clearly. I couldn't even pray the way I was, like I was used to pray. My mind felt under constant attack. And I honestly felt like I was losing my mind. That's how real the battle was. But even in the middle of that season, God began to teach me how to fight. Not physically, but mentally and spiritually. And this is how I birthed my book, The Spiritual Battle. And out of that warfare, I birthed that book, The Spiritual Battle. The book was not written from comfort. Listen, I was going through the battle. In the process, writing this book while I'm going through this battle. This book was written from survival. It was written from warfare. It was written from breakthrough. And inside the book, I walk you through how the enemy attacks your mind, how thoughts are planted and manipulated, how to discern what is from God and what is not, how to take authority over your thinking, and how I personally overcame mental torture and came out stronger than ever. This is not theory. This is testimony. And if you've been battling in your mind, if you've been dealing with overthinking, fear, confusion, or mental pressure, the Spiritual Battle book will help you understand what's happening and how to fight back. Now, let me say this. No book compares to the Bible. Any book that I have written, and I've released my 13th book on March the 18th. No book is compared to the Bible. But I truly believe that God uses people like me and other authors to write, to inspire, to use biblical principles and examples that coincide with the Bible to help people understand how to overcome situations that they're dealing with. Because you're not losing your mind. You're in a battle. And you can win it. If I won the battle in my mind, you can win it too. That book is available on Amazon and all major platforms as well. You can DM me if you want to get a copy. I do have some on hand. Listen, especially if you're ready to go deeper and overcome the attacks in your mind. This isn't just a book, it's a weapon. You got to know how to fight the right way. Under Lucretia's Kingdom Legacy, listen, we're building more than conversations. We're building community and structure. If you're an author, if you're a speaker, if you're a visionary, or if you're someone carrying a message that God has placed inside of you, but you need clarity, you need direction or a publishing pathway, clarity calls are now open under Consult God First Publishing. We help you move from vision to execution with structure, strategy, and spiritual alignment. So if you've been carrying a book, a testimony, or a message, this may be your season to release it. God said the time is now. You can email at info@consultgodfirstpublishing.com or visit www.consultgodfirstpublishing.com. Now, we're also actively building our impact arm, the Destiny Protected Initiative, which is now a nonprofit organization waiting on our 501c3 approval. But in the meantime, we are preparing to support young girls in undeserved communities with sanitary napkins and personal hygiene supplies. The need is greater in Nigeria, where I've actually partnered with the ministry over there, Wonder Women Network Initiative, where the mission is about protecting dignity, protecting confidence, and protecting destiny. Listen, I really went through to understand what having lack of personal hygiene and sanitary napkins throughout my years. So I understand how that feels to not have what you need and you don't want to go to school because of it. So we're currently seeking kingdom partners, sponsors, product owners, organizations that want to make a global impact. And we've also created a GoFundMe page seeking donations to be able to help undeserved girls. And in the event, if you feel led to sponsor a care package or even donate to that GoFundMe, listen, I thank you so much in advance. Thank you for your support, because that means that you see the vision and you see what we're trying to do as far as helping these girls who are in need. So if you or your organization would like to donate, partner, or support this initiative, please reach out. You can email us at info@lucretiaskingdomlegacy.com, or you can visit the website, lucretiaskingdomlegacy.com. You can sponsor a care package on the website. You can also become a partner, because this is bigger than a podcast. This is bigger than me. This is Kingdom Impact. This is Kingdom Impact. Now, before I close out, I want to share something powerful that's happening under Consult God First Publishing, because we're officially preparing for the Legacy Voices Experience. Sunday, June 28th, 2026. This is my first event. God said you don't just attend rooms, you build them. From 2 p.m. to 5:30 p.m., 245 High Street, Montgomery, Alabama. This is not just another event. This is a room being built for voices to be heard. And this experience will feature 9 powerful authors who are stepping forward to share the heart behind their books, the stories that shape their journey, the warfare they endure before they release their message, because every book carries a voice. And every voice carries a story that can shift someone else's life. But it doesn't just stop there. Many of these authors are not just writers, they are business owners, nonprofit leaders, visionaries, kingdom builders. So you're not just coming to hear about books, you're coming into a room of purpose, impact, and transformation. This will be a space where stories will break chains, testimonies will inspire healing, and voices will remind you that your story matters too. So let me say this. This experience is going to be powerful, and you don't want to miss being in the room. So grab your tickets now on Eventbrite and secure your seat for this transformational experience. Listen, y'all, this is a free community event. Yes, I said free. I said free. Refreshments will be served as well. So if you ever said, I know I have something inside of me, I know my story could help someone, this is the room you need to be in. So for more information, or if you want to connect, email us at info@lucretiaskingdomlegacy.com, because under Consult God First Publishing, we don't just publish books. We build platforms, we amplify voices, and we create rooms for impact. And if you're a brother or sister who feels called to step into the trenches, to share your testimony, your battle, your breakthrough, I would love to have you as a guest in the war room. Your story could be the key that helps someone else survive their battle. So to apply, you can step into the war room, go to lucretiaskingdomlegacy.com and complete the war room form, because we are not just having conversations. We are building discernment. We are building strength, and we are building kingdom warriors. So listen, make sure that you follow, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss an episode or replay of Kingdom Warfare with Lucretia, streaming on all platforms. Listen, we're streaming on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, listen, Facebook, Instagram, listen, on all major platforms. So look, this month, we're focusing on the warfare of the mind. And don't miss our next War Room session, Thursday, April the 9th. Episode titled Mental Fatigue, When the Battle is Internal. Listen, we're going to step deep, because sometimes the battle isn't what's happening around you. It's what's happening within you. When your mind is tired, exhausted, when your thoughts feel heavy, when you're showing up, but internally you're exhausted, that's a different level of warfare. And many people are functioning, they are mentally drained, smiling on the outside, but battling on the inside. In this episode, we're going to go deeper into what mental fatigue really looks like in the spiritual warfare, how internal battles silently affect your peace, your focus, and your decisions, why exhaustion in your mind can delay your clarity and obedience, and how to restore your mind when you feel overwhelmed, because you can be strong and still be tired. You can have faith and still feel mentally overwhelmed. But God did not call you to live in constant mental exhaustion. He called you to walk in a sound, renewed, and restored mind. So get ready to identify it, understand it, and overcome it. I want you guys to stay armored, stay disciplined, stay aware, because this is Kingdom Warfare with Lucretia, and I'll see you in the trenches.
Got joy in my soul.